Hello, I'm Dr. Gene Giacomelli, and it's my pleasure to provide an introduction about modern farming techniques with a focus on controlled environment agriculture and hydroponics. Hydroponic production in controlled environments can provide many types of food crops and flowers at any location and really at any time if you put the effort into it. My presentation will offer insights into the various types of crop production systems and procedures and how they can be put together in a modern crop production applications. My goals for education is to introduce how crops are currently grown in controlled environment agriculture, CEA, to define and describe CEA and their hydroponic systems that grow the crops, define some fundamental science about controlled environment plant production, and then give you some real-world examples where facilities are being used today and will be into the future. The Controlled Environment Ag Center is where I work at the University of Arizona. We focus on hydroponics for applications in any type of controlled environment, from urban agriculture to the extremes of the hot and frozen deserts in the world, and ultimately to the stars. I will show you examples of greenhouses and even a lunar greenhouse. What's the difference? Growing in the open environment in the fields or in controlled environment agriculture? Fundamentally, in the open field, you're growing in the soil. You really have no choice. And you're at the whims of the weather. The weather controls when you grow, when you can't grow, and you try to provide the best seasons possible to grow those crops once per year. In a controlled environment, the grower is in control of providing the environment to the plants, and the plant then can be grown year-round. Multiple types of crops, multiple times during a growing year. What are we looking for in plant production in controlled environments? High quality and high yields. We want safe food. We want it to be secure. We'd like it to be grown pesticide-free. And we want to use our space, that is land, the water that we have available, and the plant nutrients the most efficiently as possible. And ultimately, we'd like to have a predictable harvest that is available when we want it and at the same quality from season to season, year to year. This is all possible in controlled environments in production agriculture. Environmental sustainability. We boast about the fact that there is no erosion of soil because we're not using it in the greenhouse. There is no nutrient runoff from the irrigation that we provide to the plants. We collect it all, we recycle it all, and reuse it if at all possible. There's no need for pesticides to control insects. We can use integrated pest management procedures, which basically has insect, bugs, and bacteria controlling the bad guys. We add good guys to take care of the bad guys. No herbicide need, that's for killing weeds. There's no weeds in hydroponic systems. And soil-borne diseases do not exist, although there are water-borne diseases that can inhibit hydroponic crop production. But all of this leads to a much better environmental situation wherever we put the greenhouse. The fundamentals needed for plant growth are twofold: the aerial environment and the root zone environment. And this is the same for wherever you grow, whatever crop is being grown, and whatever system you're growing that crop in. The aerial environment, that is the air around this beautiful head of lettuce, is the temperature and the humidity, plus the amount of light it receives on a daily basis, and that it needs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to grow. You need air movement as well as physical support of the plant There's no soil necessarily, so the roots have nothing to hold on to. So sometimes we have to positively support that plant. And we do need labor. These will not grow without help of educated and experienced growers. Then there's the root zone environment. In hydroponics, we get to see the root zone. Here's the roots of this head of lettuce. And that is affected by the temperature of the water that it's in, the oxygen that is dissolved in the water, and the fact that we keep the roots in the dark. That's natural for them in the soil. So we do it in hydroponics as well. And then that helps us create the physical support for those plants. This is an image kind of above the plant, looking down the long row of tomato production in a controlled environment greenhouse, set up filled with tomato plants because it's of commercial style production. This is actually 30-foot wide room or bay of the greenhouse, and it's about 100 feet long. The plants themselves are about 7 or 8 feet tall. Here's a close-up of how the plant grows out of these white containers, and it follows a string. You can barely see it. The string helps the plant grow up vertically, keeps it upright, takes care that the fruit, the tomatoes in this case, are protected from being on the floor. And there is an irrigation system called drip irrigation, which provides nutrients to each one of the plants. And this is a commercial size and spaced, very high density planting, but rows to walk between for the growers can take care of the plant. And here's a much less complex system. It's called a high tunnel greenhouse, and it can be put on the farm in the soil on the field of the farmer. And you put a plastic film roof over top of it. No hydroponics here, although shown here, but it could have hydroponics. It's lower cost. It's maybe only 14 or 20 foot wide and maybe 50 to 100 foot long. So this is a very low cost design of a greenhouse that can provide you with vegetable production throughout the year. This is a high technology greenhouse system that can do much, much more. Each one of these rows is a bay that's 24 foot wide and 100 foot long. So you see, this is 7 acres of production. This is what's called a multi-span greenhouse. There's many, many bays connected together, and this happens to be covered with glass. I want to give examples. Let's look at a commercial tomato grower using a traditional top drip irrigation and fertilization called fertigation system. Here we are. We've sort of seen this before, but this is another commercial version. Here's the plants when they're very, very young. They've just been transplanted in this cube and grown to 6, 8 inches tall, put into this rock wool slab, or it could be a peat moss slab of organic material. And it's about a 1 yard, 3 feet long. And here are 6 plants packed that close together. However, each one gets its own dripper. Each dripper provides irrigation, a precise amount at each event, and maybe 4 or 5 times an hour. So we're really spoon feeding these plants, and they end up growing very quickly. Here we are near harvest, and the student is showing you the green fruit that are being formed above, while down below we're ready to harvest like this, what we call cluster of tomatoes, 5 fruit on 1 stem harvested as a cluster. And this is called high wire tomato culture because that string, although you can't see it, is going up and there. You just barely see the blue wrap string that's here supporting each one of the plants. Next example is lettuce. And this is what's called deep water culture and floating rafts. Here's the student in front of two containers, which are deep water culture. They're about 4 foot wide and 4 foot long. And the plants are transplanted through these white plastic sheets of styrofoam boards that float on the water. This is obviously a red variety of lettuce, and there's a green variety. The transplant, when they're young, go through the board, and the roots appear at the bottom and in the water. In the water, we have dissolved the nutrients, as well as have a bubbler in there to provide sufficient amount of oxygen. And here's a student showing you at harvest one whole board of lettuce being harvested simultaneously. There's the roots that just came out of the water. Here's a close-up picture of one of the students holding one plant, about a 5 or 6 ounce head of lettuce. Very beautiful, clean, neat. It doesn't have any damage from being outdoors with insects or wind or rainstorms. And there's the roots that were just down in that water. And then I ask, is my student here some relative of Tom Cruise, or did he come here before he became a movie star? No, he didn't, but he sure does look like Tom Cruise when he was younger. Here's an example of an entire greenhouse bay, which is flooded. So no longer a 4 by 4 foot tank like you saw previously. This is the entire floor that's flooded with irrigation water. Here, back here, you can see that there's no floating boards on it, and there's the water reflecting the sunlight. But where the boards are with the lettuce on top, they're floating, and they're getting ready to be harvested. As soon as they're harvested, more boards are put in with new seedlings so that they can get very high yields. 400 tons of lettuce greens per acre per year in this design. And even special people like Martha Stewart can demonstrate that using a insulated container that you would bring to the ballpark or a football game to tailgate can be used, if it's lined with plastic, as deep water culture. And you take the roof, the cover of that styrofoam container and cut holes in it and plant lettuce plants through it. So here I am trying to convince Martha Stewart that yes, anybody can do this at home. Aeroponic production. In this case, roots are sprayed with nutrient solution from below. And this project was for medicinal crops. Here is a colleague, Dr. Tina Hayden, growing burdock in this A-frame structure. It's A-frame with a 4 by 8 board on one side of styrofoam and on the other side. And if we lift up those wings, we get to see the roots that were dangling down into where the spray nozzles are. And this tank below is where the nutrient solution stays. We turn on the pump and we spray when the roots are down, and the green plants are now on the side of the A-frame. But to harvest, that's the beauty. She would lift up those boards, find the nice, clean white roots, and cut them off and use them to extract phytochemicals that are naturally in the burdock. She created a company based on this. Aeroponics allowed her to do that. It's a form of hydroponics, but it's all, again, located in a controlled environment facility like a greenhouse. Let's look more closely at the lunar greenhouse. It doesn't really exist yet. Here it is in our laboratory. It's a prototype. It's 18 feet long and 8 foot in diameter. And the goal is to provide hydroponically grown food to the people living and working on the moon or Mars sometime in the future. The idea also is that the plants will consume the carbon dioxide that are given off by the astronauts and provide oxygen because of their photosynthesis that they do when you turn the lights on. So there's this relationship between plants and humans living in this system. The plants can also recycle water because they give off moisture through their leaves, which increases the humidity in the air, and then we can extract the moisture from the air to have potable drinking water. Here we are where plants had been established. There's actually 4 closely spaced rows of plants on either side of this walkway. There's the high pressure sodium lamps that will provide the light, replacing the sun. We provide the temperature. We provide the nutrients and water by the hydroponics. Here we are at day 0, and then 35 days later, we see there's a massive jungle of plants that have grown. Some of them being tomato, some being basil, some being sweet potato. They're the vines that are growing down onto the floor. You could see it's a very viable growing system, makes plants grow very quickly. I want to speak about the nutrient film technique because that's what this lunar greenhouse was able to provide. I had this picture showing me standing next to it, so you really get a perspective on its size. But here are some 3-foot wide nutrient film technique rows that we can put lettuce seedlings in, feed the water at one end, collect the water draining out of it, recirculate it back to this storage tank, and grow the plants. Here's a close-up of one of those rows with mature 4 heads of lettuce, 1, 2, 3, 4, where the lid, normally it's facing down and covering the white roots. We lifted it up so you could see the white roots underneath. Over here is where the dripper from the drip system would have the water flowing at maybe a small amount, 1/4 of an inch deep across these at about 1/2 gallon per minute. And then it collects all the drain water and returns it back to be recycled. Here's a close-up of the little cube that the baby seedling was put into the lid of this tray. And look at the roots that it created and the mat of roots in the system. The South Pole Food Growth Chamber is a recirculating NFT system similar to the lunar greenhouse, but it also has a deep water culture system. And why is there need for this growth chamber? The South Pole, the US, has a research center that has people living and working year-round. And this is truly at the South Pole. Here's a picture of the research center and the picture of the snow everywhere. Inside, we created this growing room and produced plants. Here are 2 pictures of the model of that room. There is one part that produces tall tomatoes or cucumbers and peppers in the middle. That's these you see in the lower right-hand corner. And lettuces and other kind of greens in the small NFT troughs that we just previously looked at. Here they are in the lower right corner again at 2 levels. And above them are the high pressure sodium lamps, providing the energy that the sun would normally do. And this entire room is inside of that research building. It's not out in the snow and the very, very cold. It does very well here. There's the food growth room. There's this sitting room, ante-room, where people would come and watch the plants grow. And then there's a utility room off to the side where we have all the nutrient solutions and the pumps and the storage, plus the computer control. Here's a view sitting in that ante-room, looking into the growing room. And you see a perspective of the people that could enter through the doors, do their work, harvest the plants, transplant new ones, and they really love it. We've grown 70 different species of plants down there, from lettuce greens to cantaloupe melons. And this since 2004, still in production today down at the South Pole. because it provides these things: fresh veggies that can't get there in the wintertime. It's too cold for the planes to even fly in to bring fresh. So all they can eat is frozen veggies, of course, or dried. It's bright, humid in a dark climate down there. There's interesting fragrances and smells that come from the plants. These people become gardeners. They do this in their spare time down there. There's many psychological benefits for plants growing with people in extreme environments. Here's something relatively new. The past 10, 15 years is the vertical farm. It's indoor growing again, hydroponics. This is lettuce greens with LED lamps. No more high pressure sodium lamps. They are LEDs that produce very good lighting for less heating. That's always a problem with the high pressure sodium lamps. So this is grown in multiple layers. It's used in urban agriculture because it can go into small spaces. It could also be designed to grow into very big spaces. And that right now, there's few in operation, but the business viability is being developed as we speak. There's multiple stacked layers of hydroponic rows of crop production. Here's an image standing way back in a very large facility in Texas that grew hydroponically on every one of these levels, and above the level was the LED lights. The pinkish purpling color is because the LED is not white light like we're used to. It's a combination of red and blue light. And when you put those two together, we interpret them as being this pink or purple fuchsia, depending on how you see it. Aquaponics is a combination of growing fish and plants. So here's the young man holding a tilapia fish, huge tilapia fish, as well as a relatively large one head of romaine lettuce that he grew in the system. The fish lived in the tanks behind him. These white walls are the walls of the tank. The fish are fed their normal food, and the waste products from the fish go into the water, which is then recirculated underneath these floating rafts of deep water culture lettuce. So you have water that's continually being recirculated. You have nutrients that the plants extract from the water and clean it up before it goes back to the fish. So it's a very efficient use of water and nutrients. And this can be, by my definition, considered organic production because we're using fish waste to grow the plants. No other nutrients are added. Location. Here is a skyline of Manhattan and a building with a rooftop greenhouse in Brooklyn on this side of the river. There's the greenhouse I show. The company is Gotham Greens. They've been in business now about 15 years, have greenhouses all across the country. But one of their first was in New York City, 3-bay greenhouse, hydroponic lettuce, so that they could produce the lettuce in the city and deliver it within minutes to locations to be sold and eaten that same day. So transportation costs were almost eliminated, but the plants could be grown in spaces that was wasted. This is the rooftop of an old building. Here is a modern version of that. The same company, Gotham Greens, worked with Whole Foods to say, you're going to build your Whole Foods facility in this location in Brooklyn. We want to build our greenhouse on top of it. So there's 20,000 square feet of greenhouse, almost 1/2 acre, growing lettuce and leafy greens in the nutrient film technique, hydroponics, in a controlled environment greenhouse. Application. This you may recognize as a container. You might see it on the back of a tractor trailer truck. That's about the size, 40 foot long, 12 foot wide. Inside, though, there's walls of lettuce, essentially grown vertically stuck into this wall where water is behind it to feed the roots, and the lights are on our side. We just move the wall away from the lights so we can get a better picture. So this container can be set down in a parking lot. It can be set at a school. It could be set in many places near a restaurant to grow fresh herbs, fresh greens for the restaurant or for people for salads and other products. Finally, I did not really tell you how to grow. That's going to take time. That you will have to learn about irrigation and fertilization. And what I tried to show you was ways that it can be done that will help you do it. But at least now I wanted to say, how long does it take to grow? Here's lettuce. For one head of lettuce, from seeding to get a baby transplant a few inches tall, it's 7 to 10 days in our controlled environment greenhouse or vertical farm or grow room or Mars lunar greenhouse. Then it takes another 28 to 30 days for a total of 40 days to finally get to harvest that 5 to 6 ounce head of lettuce. And therefore you can do this multiple times per year, as much as 11 or 12 times per year, cycle it through in any one of these systems. Tomato is a big difference. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to go from seed to have a 6 to 7 inch transplant to go into those cubes that I showed you in the top drip, high wire hydroponic tomato system. Then it takes another 7 to 8 weeks before you get to your first harvest of that 5 red fruit cluster. From there, however, for the next 8 or 9 months, after that first 8 weeks, every week you can harvest 1 pound to 1.5 pounds of tomatoes, 1 cluster every week. So it's a continuous harvest on the same plant once a week, as opposed to the lettuce, it's a once harvest each plant every 40 days. And to begin to wrap up, here we are today with our traditional possibilities of outdoor growing and greenhouses. They are in existence around the world. The US was much later in adopting this, but it is really caught up in the last 10 to 15 years. Also, what's beginning to happen is urban agriculture, the rooftop greenhouse, aquaponics, the vertical farms, and very local farm markets to bring the farm and the growing closer to the people. But the future we look to, Mars lunar habitats, that's depicted by this model here, that in the end of each one of these white arms, that would be below the surface of the moon or Mars, would be a space farm, and it would be our Mars lunar greenhouse. We hope for that someday. Final thought. You can read this summary when there's an opportunity. However, what I'm really trying to emphasize here is education. We need continued education, not of everyone, but the food producers for sure, to understand how to do it, but educating the consumer to respect and know what they're getting. But then ultimately the farmers and the growers who are going to be delivering the food to the wholesale and to the retail markets, and ultimately in general to the young people, so that they grow up into controlled environment agriculture. The goal is a future economically viable, environmentally reasonable, and socially acceptable food production systems for all people. I give you a list of references on the web that I trust as competent and useful information, much of what I've already just told you. If you need further information, please contact the Controlled Environment Agriculture Center at ceac.arizona.edu. And we offer a short course, 3 to 4 days every March here in Tucson, Arizona. And you're welcome to come there. It's for beginners or for more mature growers. And it certainly is for people who are making this their second career. So think about that, education. Finally, if you want to know a little bit about me, this is Dr. Gene Giacomelli and my address at the University of Arizona. You're welcome to send me a message at any time, and I'll do my best to respond. I want to thank the organization for putting this program together and including the future of modern production agriculture as one of the educational modules. I want to thank them very much. And I want to congratulate you for wanting to learn, to sitting through this presentation. And I hope you got sufficient out of it to begin to learn even more and put some of this into practice using hydroponics in controlled environment agriculture. Thank you very much.